Hello, everybody. Welcome to SportsLogos.Net podcast episode 6. I am your most excellent co-host, Chris Creamer. Joining me as always, Paul Caputo. Party on, Paul.
Party on, Chris Creamer. Hey, guess what? There are real statistics on this. We have surpassed, by virtue of doing episode 6, 95% of all podcasts that exist in the world.
That means we're officially in the top 5%, right?
We are in the top 5% of of all podcasts ever. Most of them don't actually get past episode 3. Yeah, people.
So we're doubling it. We're doubling.
Yeah.
Most podcasts, and we are rolling now. We have a whole format going. We might not have a name yet, but we're still going.
We have 2 new segments we're going to do on this episode. Hang in there, everyone. We got segments coming up at the end of the episode. You're gonna love them.
There is a rule about podcasts saying that you can't introduce segments until after episode 5. So we're following podcast rules here. There's laws that we have to take care of.
And because it's an international podcast with you in Canada and me in the United States, we have to follow the Geneva podcast conventions for introducing new segments. So
we're gonna get dragged in front of the World Podcast Court.
Yeah. Although I believe that the United States is now withdrawing from the United Podcast Nations. So,
Okay, well, I have no comment on that. Instead, I'm going to comment on the first couple of weeks of baseball here. I was just listening to our previous episode the other day with my wife, and I kind of cringed when I heard myself boasting about my undefeated Blue Jays because since I made that premature boasting, my team has won 1 game and lost something like 6. So things aren't going so well in Blue Jay land. But I did wake up this morning to about half a foot of snow in my front yard.
Goodness.
Just as the Jays experienced on opening day in 1977. So perhaps that is a good omen. I say crack open the dome and let the Dodgers play in a snowfall blizzard.
That'll
let
learn
them experience real baseball. That'll teach them.
I got to see my Phillies in action, and when I use the word action, I use that kind of euphemistically because they scored 3 runs in 2 days at Coors Field at games that I attended, and I had a very special moment as a fan. I got to see the Phillies become the first ever Major League Baseball franchise to surrender a 200,000th hit.
Hey!
The Phillies are the first Major League franchise to have given up 200,000 plus hits. I got to see Drew Goodman single in the first inning against Taijuan Walker. That was hit number 200,000 all time that the Phillies have surrendered.
Well, put up a banner for that, I say, Philadelphia.
That's kind of foreshadowing for our new "I Was There" segment that we have coming up later on in the episode.
There you go.
But that is not my "I Was There."
No, you're gonna have to say that for a future segment.
Yeah, that'll be a future segment.
After everyone forgets the story you just told. Speaking of banners, though, Paul, at one point in some episode coming up, I'm gonna have to go off on an epic rant about championship banners that teams are flying because I have a real problem about some of them. I'm not going to do it today because I need to sit down and I really need to study to make sure I'm not saying the wrong things here. But this is, of course, stemming from my Jays and their decision to fly an ALCS champs banner tacked onto the bottom of their division champions banner instead of, I'm going to get right into it now. I know it.
I remember shortly after the wild card format was introduced, the Yankees they were selling like a New York Yankees AL wildcard T-shirt, and I thought that is just what a proud franchise.
Well, and going back to my complaint, and again, I'm not going to get too far into this here because that'll totally throw the entire show off.
Right.
But right now, so that magical season my Blue Jays just had, where they were 1 centimeter away from winning the World Series, that got a single banner, which I'm fine with. I'm cool with that, right?
Yeah.
In 2016, the Blue Jays won the wild card game and then beat the Rangers in a best of 5. That gets 2 banners.
Wow.
1 for winning the wild card, 1 for winning the ALDS against the Rangers. I am very, very opposed to that.
Yeah.
That should get 0 banners. Let me just be clear. They didn't win a division. They didn't win a pennant. That gets no banners. Why does it get 2?
What's your feeling on hats when they you go to a playoff series and they sell the hats that have both of the logos of the teams playing in that playoff series?
I am fine with that.
Okay.
I like matchup. They're called dueling merchandise. Yes,
See,
and I was at 4 Blue Jays World Series games this past October, and I bought the dueling Dodgers Blue Jays World Series t-shirt. Yeah, I wore it for about a week before I said, you know what? I don't need to remember this.
And you did, and you can chalk it up to history. The banner is there. You don't have to remember
Uh,
it because the banner's doing that job for you.
hey, very nice. Very nice, Paul. All right,
Uh,
let's try to get on track here,
yeah.
mister. We're always going off the board here.
Everyone knows, Chris, that you and I are baseball guys, but there's been football news, and so we're gonna lead with the NFL because the NFL sells, and these big sponsorship dollars are rolling in for the podcast, and we got to lead with what the people want. The
The
Atlanta
people want
Falcons,
football. Yeah.
yeah, the Atlanta Falcons. Listen, Chris, they pull their pants on one leg at a time, just like every other NFL player does. And you said on the website that it's not often that pants are what pull a uniform together, but that's the case here with the new Falcons uniform. We expected they were going to be throwbackish. They are. You have called out in particular the pants. So tell me what's going on with the Falcons pants?
Well, the reason why I say that is the jersey itself. I'm thinking of it from like a retail point of view. You know, you go to the sports shop, you see the jersey hanging on the rack. That Falcons jersey is not going to be one that, catches your attention. It's a number, a word mark, and a logo on the sleeve. And football jerseys do have this issue, right? Because there's not much to put on them. You can't really it's not like a hockey jersey, which looks amazing on the store rack, or
Right.
a basketball jersey, which despite its odd shape or odd cut, still looks pretty darn good on the rack. The football jersey is a big giant number. And if you don't have stripes on the sleeves, it looks just like a fairly boring t-shirt, right? Let's be honest. So this goes back to, I remember it was about 10 years ago, the Toronto Argonauts of the CFL came out with their new uniforms. And unlike the NFL, the CFL jerseys were being sold without any player name or number on them.
Mm.
So this didn't have a logo on the sleeve, had no stripes. I found it on the store shelf, and it was just a plain blue jersey, and it said Toronto just underneath the collar. And I thought, why in a million years would anybody buy that? There's absolutely nothing on it. And I get a little critical of football jerseys because of that little moment I experienced. So the Falcons, with no stripes on their sleeves, that really led to me thinking these are fairly boring
Yeah.
as a jersey. And it wasn't until I saw the pants paired with them, and then, of course, the helmet on top of that when they released it for real, that I said, okay, you know what? This is actually a pretty decent set. It's going to look good on the field. The pants with the striping. I love the little bit of silver. That little bit of silver in the pants striping is really doing a lot of work for this because it just adds a little extra to an otherwise safe, I'm going to say safe uniform
Okay.
in lieu of it is boring,
Yeah.
but I think it's supposed to be boring, right? That's intentional after so many years of over the top Falcons uniforms.
Maybe boring, as you said, is okay just because it's like it's classic, it's sort of timeless. I feel like it sort of bucks the trend of every other sport getting sort of more and more complicated and more garish on the field. So you are more of a student of NFL uniforms than I am, and so you have a better sense for it. But I do like the black pants with
Well,
the white jersey.
so I pulled up thesaurus.com for boring. Let's see. We could say they're dull. That sounds bad. Humdrum. I like humdrum. These are
Uh,
humdrum uniforms. Mundane sounds bad.
sure.
Stodgy.
Okay.
Tame. I like tame.
All right. All right.
These uniforms are very tame, Paul.
All right. It took us 6 episodes to get to the thesaurus here, so that's
That's also in the podcast charter, I think. Okay.
that's right. We're just in under the wire. We're being watched
So did we meet
closely.
our NFL mandate here?
I
Yeah.
think we met
Did we meet
our
our NFL
NFL
mandate? We're
mandate.
good.
Thank goodness we can go back to another southeastern United States throwback uniform that is making the fans happy. The Florida slash Miami Marlins have reprised their teal. The headline from Glenn Cook on the website says that the Miami Marlins throwback to Florida teal with their new uniform for 2026. We can't get away from throwbacks, Chris. It's just throwbacks, throwbacks, throwbacks. And here we are with the Miami Marlins. The problem with the throwbacks, again, as our friend John Hodgman tells us, nostalgia is a toxic impulse. But these are legitimately good uniforms, right? Like it was the 90s. It was the law that they had to involve teal. These solid colored teal Marlins uniforms, I like them. I'm glad they're back. I think it'll be fun to see them out on the field.
Oh, absolutely. And this is an example of a team shedding its unique identity, basically, what made them stand apart in the league. And we saw this recently. We talked about it in an episode a few weeks ago. I can't even remember what team we were talking about. No, that was the Titans going back to
Oh
baby
yeah.
blue and red, I think. Yeah, it made them look unique. Why get rid of something that makes you stand out amongst the league? The Padres resisted it for years. Oh, we don't want to be brown. We don't want to be brown. Now they
Yeah.
love brown
Yeah.
and they stand out, right? So the Marlins getting rid of teal back in, I guess, well, they started to get rid of teal bit by bit in the late 90s. They turned into a black team with teal as a trim. And then, what, 2012, they became orange and black and forgot that they were ever teal to begin with. So I really do. Yeah, I love that they went back to this all teal look. They never actually wore this in a game back in the 90s, this teal jersey. It was a batting practice, a spring training jersey back then.
Is that true?
But yeah, we saw it on so many baseball cards of the era, though, because they took photos during batting practice and spring training that it kind of felt like an actual Marlins uniform. As far as I can tell, they never wore teal in a game.
That is a high
They
quality podcast fact right there, Chris. That is what's going to keep people coming back to this podcast. I had no idea. I had zero idea that this was never worn in a game.
that's why I'm here to talk to you. You share minor league with me, and I share random color facts with you.
We have a system in place, Chris, to restrain my minor league baseball. We're gonna save it for a segment at the end here. So
Yes.
I'm holding back.
Are you wearing
Finally,
your shock collar? I have the button.
I am finally caught up, by the way, on like the deluge in February and March of all of the alternate identities. So it's as of this moment, I don't think I have any outstanding minor league baseball alternates to write about. So we can keep talking about this Major League Baseball.
Yes.
We'll get to minor league baseball a little bit later on in the episode.
I've got my finger on the button, Paul. Just
Yeah,
one
yeah,
more
yeah.
word, and I'm
No, no,
I'm
no.
hitting it, and you're getting buzzed.
This new segment will involve an actual buzzer. So I mean, I feel like this teal brand stands the chance of, and I'm going to, as I do, relate everything to the Phillies. The Phillies have two main identities, right? Like they've got the red and royal blue, and they have the maroon and powder blue era as well. And those two identities have really become sort of meshed, right? Like you see them both
Mhm.
at the ballpark. The Phillies are wearing both of them. They're wearing their away blues as home uniforms, because that's what people are doing with the powder blues these days. And the Brewers have done the same thing, right? Like the Brewers retro logo is now essentially their new logo, and they have all sorts of, stages along the way that they have, brands that they've had over the years. I think the Marlins really stand a chance. I don't think we're going to see that like the Marlins man orange, that
Mhm.
they have had. I don't think we're going to see too much of that, but I think we'll see their current brand and this old teal one kind of get sort of merged into one brand, I think. I think we're going to see the Marlins, really embrace this teal.
They have to, right? Like they
Yeah.
can't hide it anymore. And it's not like there's anything to be ashamed of, right? Like they won two World Series titles when they wore teal. Nothing wrong with that. It's the only time that the franchise saw success. Of course, they
Yeah.
also saw some of their darkest days
Yeah.
wearing
Yeah.
teal.
I was glad to see Darren Dalton and Jim Eisenreich get their World Series with those with those teal Marlins teams.
Devon White was on that teal Marlins team too.
See, some of
Of
these guys
course.
got their just desserts here, getting to win a ring after toiling with non-World Series teams all those
Our
years.
our 93 World Series rivals all teamed up together to help Florida win a World Series. What I do hope the Marlins do, I hope they make this a permanent addition to their set, and
Yeah.
maybe not necessarily exactly as is. I would love to see an updated teal set, kind of like what the Brewers did, kind of like what the Padres did. Take the old colors, take the old look, bring it into the present. If they're going to keep the name Miami, which they probably will, incorporate that into the throwback look. Because right now, the cap with an F on it makes absolutely no sense. The sleeve patch reading Florida makes absolutely no sense. You could have turned this into a proper Marlins alternate jersey by simply changing that F to an M
Hmm.
and the word Florida to Miami. And now you have a Miami Marlins identity, and you can say, hey, this is the way we're going in the future. But, the reason why a team like your Phillies keeps those two separate identities going is because both of them are so popular and
Right.
they can get away with allowing their fans to choose. Do you want to be current Phillies? Do you want to be throwback Phillies? They make the same amount of money either way. It makes no difference to the team. The Marlins, I don't think they're going to be in that same situation because I can't imagine that Marlins fans are, looking at these two options on the shelf and saying, I want the modern Marlins look instead of that teal Florida Marlin.
Right.
Like
Right.
it's just not going to happen, right? They're going to embrace the teal, and I feel like it's inevitable that, at some point the next few years we're going to see a teal heavy Miami Marlins identity coming out just because like it doesn't make sense not to let it happen.
You said way more efficiently and eloquently what I was trying to say about this teal is just going to become part of the brand. And so because they have the F hat, it's a throwback. But the moment they
Mhm.
embrace that teal and put Miami with the teal, then it's part of the set. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think
You could
that's
put the current logo on there. Like, why
yeah,
couldn't you put the modern Marlins logo on a teal hat?
yeah.
Like, just adjust the shade of that blue that they're holding on to instead of saying teal. Like, just make the blue teal, and you're good.
I think
Done.
that's where they're going. I think that's where they're going. Speaking of that, the 1993 entries to Major League Baseball, I was at the Rockies this weekend, and listen, the Rockies don't put a good product on the field, but one thing they do, they've got a strong Helmet Sunday game, and the last 2 years they have used their City Connect brand for their Helmet Sundays, and so I got like the
Nice.
sky blue with the purple mountains. The new Rockies City Connect is on their ice cream helmet, and so that was a major find for me. Speaking of sky blue, we've already mentioned the Phillies powder blue. There's a City Connect brand. Next week is the City Connect episode, but there's a City Connect brand that I want to talk about. Before I do that, I just very quick
Hmm.
question for you because I don't want to get too derailed. You and I are good at getting derailed. Historically, I think the Chicago Cubs are the first team to wear powder blue as part of their uniform, way back before the powder blue craze really actually took place. That is a fact that I know from one of our friend Todd Radum's books, that it was the
Oh,
Chicago Cubs originally who, way before powder blue was a thing, the Chicago Cubs wore powder blue. My question for you is, what team do you associate with the powder blues? Who do you credit for really instigating the powder blue craze? Because there's a lot of them who try to lay claim to it.
well, so you kind of asked two different questions there.
Oh,
One was, who do I think of when I think of powder blue?
yeah.
When I think of powder blue in baseball uniforms, the first team I think of is the Kansas City Royals. And I think
Oh,
that's just because of when I grew up. And you could be thinking, what about the Montreal Expos, right?
right.
For some reason, I think the Royals just really, powder blue felt like it was a part of their identity, right? Like it felt like they should be wearing powder blue. And, when I started watching baseball, the Jays had already switched to gray. I missed their powder blue era. A lot of teams had already converted to gray.
Yeah.
But there were two teams left that still wore powder blue, and that was the Expos and the Royals. And the Royals just felt like more like a natural powder blue team than the Expos did. So yeah, when I think of in my life what was the original powder blue team, it's the Kansas City Royals, but that's just because of when I grew up and when I was born. When you said, just now, who was the first powder blue team? My instinct was the Brooklyn Dodgers. I didn't know the
Oh,
Chicago Cubs were the first one. I knew they were an early one because that was part of their the reason for bringing back powder blue just last year as an
yeah.
alternate jersey.
Yeah.
But I do know the Dodgers were one of the first teams to wear powder blue. I think that might have been in the 40s, and we've seen them throw back to that maybe about 15 years ago or so, back when turn back the clock games actually happened. Uh, yeah, now they're just part of their full-time set. We don't do
Yeah.
one-time games anymore.
Right.
There was a time there in the 70s and 80s where, we should do a study on this, and I'm sure it's
Hmm.
in Todd's book coming up, that how about the percentage of powder blue on the road as time goes by?
Yeah, because there were, I mean, when you said, oh, you're probably thinking, what about the Montreal Expos? I'm thinking
Hmm.
every team that has ever had a powder blue is thinking, oh, what about my team, right? Like
Yeah,
the Brewers and the
yeah.
Cardinals and my Phillies. There's so many powder blues that were out there, and people are like, no, it was mine that was the one that kicked them off. The reason I asked you about powder blues, Chris, is because, like I mentioned, we have a City Connect to talk about. Next week, we're going to have lots of City Connects to talk about, but right now,
Hmm.
folks can go onto the website and they can read about the new Atlanta Braves powder blue City Connects with the lowercase a, which is not exactly the same as, but certainly throws back to the Hank Aaron era Braves with that lowercase a. I think it's a sharp looking. Guess what? We're going to use this word. I think it's a throwback. This Braves City Connect powder blue, lowercase a, lot
It's
of
a
sort of,
pullover jersey too.
and it's a pullover jersey,
Yeah.
has throwbacky vibes, even if it's not exactly a throwback. It gets to what I was talking about last week about City Connects, which is I prefer the City Connects that have at least some relationship to the team's identity. That is not just
Hmm.
completely, brand new identity for a long-standing Major League Baseball team. So while I am not a fan of the Atlanta Braves, because of course I'm a Philadelphia Phillies fan, I am a fan of these uniforms. I think that this is it evokes a classic era from this team's uniforms.
Braves, Phillies, you're all just teams we destroyed in the World Series. You're all the same to me.
I was rooting hard for your Blue Jays in that World Series. So
Thank you.
please.
I appreciate so is I. Um, this is definitely a throwbacky vibes. I was surprised when I first saw that they had incorporated the old TBS logo onto the sleeve. I thought that was a, a bit of a shock that Major League Baseball would allow that.
Right.
But I guess now that the station doesn't use the logo anymore,
Mm.
and I don't think are they TBS doesn't show Major League Baseball games anymore, do they? I don't know American TV MLB deals.
Yeah, I don't know the
But
answer to that. Yeah, Major League Baseball is on like 9 different streaming services, right? Like you can watch it on Netflix and Peacock and Hulu or whatever. I
yeah,
mean,
who
so
who knows these days? I just go on the MLB TV app and then there it is. I
yes,
don't have to worry about anything.
yes,
But so as somebody who grew up again in the era of Braves baseball on TBS and during a time when you couldn't just watch any game you wanted to whenever you wanted to, right? It was whatever game your TV package happened to have, and you weren't even guaranteed to have a game that night, which might shock our younger viewers that there were some nights when there were no baseball on TV. Some people had to wait a whole week to watch a baseball game on
right.
TV.
Whereas
Um,
nowadays you can't watch it at all because it's blacked out.
yeah, exactly. Unless you're in another country and then you get every American game. So
Ah,
that's
very
fine.
good, very good.
Yes. So here I had one of three options, right? You get the Jays on CBC, you'd get the Expos on TSN, or you'd get Braves baseball on TBS Superstation.
Right.
And that was a reliable source of baseball where I could watch a National League game regularly, where you got to know the commentators, you got to know the Braves players, and they were, kind of a lovable loser type team back then. They weren't very good. And then out of nowhere, they had this amazing season in 91, and then that just continued almost forever. And I'm sure a fan of the NL East. Well, that back then they're NL West actually.
Back then they
Uh,
were in the NL West,
yeah,
which is wild. And in 1969, when they realigned the divisions and there was like all this jockeying for who was going to end up in which division, the Cubs and the Cardinals were jockeying to get into the NL East because they wanted to stay there together. So that sort of pushed the Reds into the West, and then the Braves in the National League West. And as a kid, I never thought about it. I never was just like, why are
no,
the Braves in the West anyway? That it's like, okay, thank goodness they're
that's
not in my
just where the
division.
Braves play.
Yes. And then when they realigned and the Braves ended up in the East with the Phillies, I was like, well, the Phillies are never going to win the division ever again because the Braves are just too dominant.
That's where the wild card comes in.
Yes. Thank goodness.
So, as someone who grew up again, just to go back to my point there, this uniform, it makes sense. It's an era worth celebrating for the Braves.
Yeah.
Although I don't associate that baby blue, lowercase a, with the TBS era. To me, that's kind of clashing two different eras.
Mm.
The current Braves uniform is much more closer to what I would associate with the Braves TBS era. But yeah, I was just surprised to see that they chose this as their City Connect uniform. But with you, I do think that City Connects should tie back to the franchise's existing branding and identity because there's nothing worse than turning on a ball game and finding out you have no idea what that team is. It doesn't even have their team name on the jersey. He's not wearing their colors. It could literally be any team out there. I don't know. Is this even a major league game? Like, is this a
Right.
minor league game? Is it college? Who knows? You should never have that feeling when you're watching a Major League Baseball game, especially one involving a team that you're rooting for.
Yeah. All right,
Marathon?
Chris. There's still stuff on the show flow here. One of the items that I want to get to, this has been up on the website here since the last day of March. We know that it was not an April Fool's joke because it was March 31st. By the way, as a person who reports on minor league baseball brands, which are outrageous anyway. I genuinely hate April Fool's Day. So I'm glad it's over. I'm glad that none of them got me. But I am going to talk about my minor league minute is going to be about a brand that was released on April Fool's Day and turned out to be real.
You've already used up about 45 seconds of your
I know
minor
it's
league minute,
true. I've
my
got
friend.
15 seconds left to talk about this brand. But we're not there yet, Chris, because first I want to talk about the new slash old logo for the Los Angeles Rams that was leaked for 2026 because it was on their draft day caps. This new LA Rams brand looks like it's got like a crescent moon in it, and it's got like a Rams horn in it. It's got the letters LA. It looks familiar to anyone who has ever seen a Los Angeles Rams logo. What do we know about this new Rams logo?
Well, I know what's on the cap. That's about it. Unfortunately, I have no inside information here. But for those who haven't seen it, the logo that we've seen on this leaked draft cap, because the cap itself was leaked, which is how we saw this, it is basically a two-color version of the existing Rams logo. They got rid of all the gradients. They got rid of a lot of the zaniness of it. It looks like one solid yellow all the way through, and then outlined in well, this is probably just a cap decoration, but like some sort of chrome situation going on there. So really, the cap we're seeing here, it's what the Rams logo looks like on a dark background. What we see on a light background could be a completely different story. It's basically a cleaner, more simplified version of the existing Rams logo. Probably something that had to happen. Gradients just don't exist in this digital world, in this embroidery world. It's like with the Devil Rays when they seem to be trying to bring back gradients. It's not a great idea, but they're going to do it anyway. But fortunately, the Rams have kind of seen the light and decided, hey, let's go flat and one solid yellow. Let's simplify this whole thing. We don't have to be every yellow under the sun. I do want to see what it looks like on a white background first, if there's a blue trim, if there's any blue involved whatsoever.
Chris, give us like 5 years and we're going to be all gradient blends again. It is going to be, it's going to be, Adobe Illustrator has been doing it for years, but now we've figured out how to embroider it, or there's some other way to get it onto a cap or to a uniform, and it's going to be all gradient blends. I was, of course, going to bring up our conversation about the Devil Rays, and you beat me to it.
I stepped all over your talking point. I'm sorry.
They are team gradient blends, so far as I'm concerned, and
Are they the only ones that really embrace the gradient?
I can't. I mean, outside of course, minor league baseball, I can't think of. There's lots of teams. As you know, I've always said that the Tampa Bay Devil Rays are the Everett Aqua Sox of gradient blends.
Have they ever been called that by anyone but you?
No, just me, and this is the first time, and I've never even said it before. This is actually a first for that.
I've always said, actually, it's the only time.
Have you heard about this?
Yeah, it's nice and clean. That let's just summarize it up. It looks like a nice, clean version of it, but really, we can't fully give our grade until we see the actual release version. These draft caps, they add little touches to them that aren't actually part of the logo, so who knows what it looks like. But this is promising, I think, to many.
And this was leaked by an independent retailer. Do I have this correct? It was leaked in Australia first?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
The internet's very global. The leaks can happen all over the world. And you find a lot of the leaks happen overseas because they don't know, or they don't care that hasn't been released. So to them, it's just another team, but they don't know that this is a big deal that they're causing.
This World Wide Web is here to stay, Chris, I think.
Unfortunately.
All right, Chris, we have two new segments that we're gonna close out the show every week with a couple of new segments that I really enjoy. The first one is going to be, because listeners have sensed the tension on this show when I try to talk about minor league baseball, and you rein me in, and you know that if I get going too hard on it, that you'll never be able to stop me. So we're gonna time this, Chris. I have exactly 1 minute to talk about a new minor league baseball logo, alternate or primary identity. Okay. These are all on the website. Any minor league baseball logo that I talk about is something that I've written about for the website. And so when you tell me go,
I have a stopwatch here.
You just tell me when to start here.
All right. On your marks.
Okay.
Start thinking now, because you only have a minute. What are you going to talk about?
I've been thinking for a full week.
Paul's going to condense a whole week into it. We're going to call this Paul's week in a minute. Okay. Ready?
Yeah, ready.
Go.
All right, Chris, the Winnipeg Goldeyes, an independent team in the American Association of Professional Baseball, they had to convince their fans that they were not kidding around when they unveiled on April 1st a new alternate identity, the Manitoba Mosquitos. It's designed by Brooks Freeman of Serpent Design, which is a designer we have not featured before. This is in the grand tradition of minor league baseball teams featuring total pests, the Sugarland Skeeters, now the Sugarland Space Cowboys, and the Savannah Sand Gnats, who are now the Columbia Fireflies. Both did that. They celebrated giant pests who were a pain in the neck to local fans. Apparently, you may know better than I do. In Manitoba, Canada, mosquitoes are a huge pain in the neck and really drive people crazy. And so they're going to celebrate mosquitoes with an alternate identity in Manitoba.
Ding, ding, ding.
That was your minor league baseball minute, Chris.
Well done. I could see this, like, I wanted to see stress in your eyes, but I didn't. I saw like the eyes of a stone cold killer. That's what I saw. This guy, he knew what his minor league target was, and he found it.
I had to really center myself and then just let the Manitoba Mosquitoes channel themselves through me. So
be honest, you don't remember anything of that minute,
no,
right?
I
You
blacked out
right out.
Yeah, I blacked out for about 90 seconds here.
Yeah, you're like, well, did it even happen? I'm ready. Let's just do it already.
Thank goodness it was recorded.
But yes, there are a lot of mosquitoes in Manitoba. I will add that.
Okay.
My son and I spent an evening in Manitoba during our cross Canada drive last year, and it was the highlight of our drive across Canada. So all the bad press, I guess, Winnipeg gets for its mosquitoes and its weather, you impressed my son and I on that nice breezy May evening.
Good job, Manitoba.
Good job, Manitoba. My son keeps talking about, I want to go to Manitoba. Yeah, but it takes 3 days to drive there. So,
all right. Now, Chris, we have an untimed segment coming up, and this one was your idea. So I'm going to let you introduce this one.
yeah. So, with the Jays' 50th season coming up, they've had a series of commercials, and their motto this year basically has been like, where will you be? And the idea is that they show classic moments in team history, and then the players talk about where they were when they saw that happen. So where were you, and where will you be when the next moment happens? And that could be, that'd be fun to share where we were during classic sports moments, especially those, because the story might be a little more interesting, those that impacted either of us. Either we were there or involved our teams, or, just a generic big moment for sports. So with the NCAA tournament going on, you and I got talking, and you said you liked it, and you said you wanted to share an NCAA Final Four "Where Was I" story, and this one's going to be all you because I don't have anything to do with this. So, Paul, where were you when Villanova won the 2016 men's Final Four tournament?
My father is a retired professor. He was at Villanova University for 36 years, professor of philosophy at Villanova. We had season tickets in 1985 when they won the whole thing. So, Villanova basketball is in my blood, in my roots. In 2016, Villanova very famously beat North Carolina on a buzzer beater. North Carolina had tied it up with a three-pointer, an unlikely three-pointer. Off balance, off the backboard, tied it up. And I thought, oh, God, here we go. Villanova's going to lose. I didn't think it at the time, and you'll see why in a moment. But Archie Diacono then took the ball out of bounds, dribbled the ball up the court, dished to Chris Jenkins, who, as time expired, drilled a three-pointer that gave my Villanova Wildcats the championship over the North Carolina Tar Heels. My brother went to Duke, so he was like doubly happy to see the Tar Heels lose there. When that happened, Chris, where was I? I was on the other side of the freaking planet snorkeling between the North Island and the South Island of New Zealand. There's a very cold water, not very interesting snorkeling there, right? Like there was like some sea urchins and whatnot. So it's not nearly as exotic as it sounds. Wearing a wetsuit, snorkeling, aware that this game was happening, but unable to see it in any way. Then on the bus, I didn't have an international cell phone plan. On the bus back to the hotel, I had my phone. I had no idea what had happened in this game, and I was trying to find, like, as the bus pulled up to like a stoplight and whatnot, I was trying to see if I could if we were near like a coffee shop where I could get their Wi-Fi from the traffic light, if I had 30 seconds to try to log in and get some sort of connectivity. Drove me absolutely wild not knowing what happened in that game. We pull up to the hotel and no joke, 50 text messages download to my phone, and the drama of the game unfolded in real time over text messages from my family. And I read the score wrong at first. I thought Villanova had lost by 3. They actually won by 3. And that was where I was, Chris. I missed the entire game and found out probably about an hour after the fact that one of the most famous shots in Villanova history had gone down.
So you saw the score before you knew that miracle 3-pointer happened,
Yes.
right? What was your reaction when you saw that? Because that must have been a second, oh my gosh moment.
Yes, I assumed the entire time that North Carolina had beaten Villanova. Maybe it's just my innate pessimism as a sports fan. When I opened up the phone, saw all the text messages, the ones I saw first were the reaction to that crazy 3-pointer that North Carolina hit to tie up the game with 4 seconds to go. And so I was just and my mom was like, no, that's such a shame. And so I just had it in my head that Villanova had lost. And then I for sure thought the score that I saw, I just transposed the numbers in my brain, thought they had lost. And turns out they won by 3. Chris Jenkins.
Roller coaster, the emotional roller coaster of sports right there played out halfway around the world as Paul Caputo was snorkeling in New Zealand looking for a leaked LA Rams cap, I'm sure. My story about Villanova winning is I forgot it happened.
Yeah.
I think the next morning I might have put out a tweet saying you can get your Villanova merchandise here.
Oh, that's good.
I didn't even watch the Michigan game last night. So
I also did not watch that game last night. I actually had to check the score this morning to see who had won.
I think Michigan won, right?
Michigan beat UConn by 6, and Michigan was favored by 6.5. So I'm sure it was very exciting for people who had placed bets.
All I know about college basketball is that George Springer is very upset that UConn lost. Okay. So I can tie it back to baseball.
I used to be huge into college basketball. Villanova, my brother going to Duke. I went to Richmond. Richmond's had some famous upsets in the tournament.
Spiders.
My Richmond Spiders were the only Spiders in all of college and university athletics in the United States. We're the only Spiders. And there's not that many even in other sports.
The Dock Spiders, the Fond du Lac.
I was going to say the Fond du Lac Dock Spiders.
But I was going to say when Toronto was naming its NBA team, they had a contest where you could choose one of the 10 finalists. I was maybe 11 or 12. I went all in on tarantulas. I thought that was the name. The Toronto Tarantulas. Come on, think of that. Raptors seemed very Mighty Ducks-ish. It was of the time.
Yeah.
I made the wrong choice, but tarantulas, that would have been cool.
Tarantulas would have been cool. When Cleveland was rebranding, the Cleveland Indians were rebranding, and they went ultimately, obviously, of course, with the Guardians. The Cleveland Spiders, I thought that would have been a great, if they had reprised. Granted, the history of that team is not exactly glorious, but I thought the Cleveland Spiders would have been a great team name.
Really, the Cleveland Spiders only had one bad year, Paul, and it wasn't their fault.
It's true. It's true that it was not the players' fault. The players tried their hardest.
The owner of sorry, I just got to wrap. I got to give a little bit of respect to the Cleveland Spiders. Their owner, right? Their owner took all their best players to another franchise, right? Yeah. And they called the team the St. Louis Perfectos, I think is right. So just 19th century baseball. So that Spiders team was basically it was basically a glorified minor league team.
Yeah.
Their entire roster had been rated, and so they finished with one of the worst records in Major League history, if not the worst record in Major League history.
Percentage-wise, the worst,
before they just folded outright. So respect to the Spiders. They got villainized by just a terrible owner.
Yeah, but not my Richmond Spiders.
No way. Yeah. Never.
So Chris, I don't know how this segment works. So next week, will it be your turn to tell where were they? Okay.
I have plenty to choose from. So
all right,
we'll come up with something.
That's very exciting. Well, I chose a college basketball themed one because we just had the college basketball championship game at the time of this recording yesterday, at the time of this episode dropping 2 days ago. So Chris, this has been fun. Sir. We'll have to get to the Bridgeport Islanders next week. In the meantime, thanks very much. It's been a ton of fun, and can't wait to read about all these stories and more on SportsLogos.Net.
I can't wait to be done reporting on them. So there's a marathon. See you later, Paul. Thanks.
See you, Chris.